The Watership Down podcast is intended for listeners who are familiar with the plot. There definitely will be spoilers. This episode is scripted, narrated, recorded and edited by Newell Fisher. Hello, and welcome to the Watership Down podcast episode 201, in which we'll be looking at the character of Fiver in the original novel. First though, last week you may remember that I said the guide to the Warren would form the notes for episode 200, both on Spotify and YouTube. Unfortunately, the character limit on both platforms only allowed me to post a slightly compressed version of section 1 of the guide, so the full episode listing, which is section 2, will form the notes for this week's episode. The full guide is available as a document on the Watership Down podcast Honeycomb group on Facebook, and this version will be kept updated as it is revised. In the long run, I aim to expand the index to deal with all the subjects dealt with in the podcast, but a section enabling the finding of more obscure content, as well as an episode listing, will do for now. Can I also let you know that I am on leave next week, which is why this episode has come out after only a week, but this does mean a 3-week wait until the next episode, with my apologies. Anyway, let's get supernatural. The supernatural in Watership Down. In episode 198, before embarking on my analysis of Bigwig, I outlined the Indo-European trifunctional hypothesis in relation to Bigwig, Fiver and Hazel. We have now dealt with Bigwig the warrior, whose realm is very much the real world of here and now. And so we move on to a very different rabbit entirely. The rabbit who takes the role of the priest, or as I have chosen to call him, the reluctant shaman. In chapter 21 of the novel, at the start of Holly's terrible account of the destruction of Sandleford Warren, he mentions what the Friara had to say about rabbits such as Fiver after the original 11 rabbits left. He thinks that they are basically smaller, weaker rabbits who try to make out that they have special powers as a way of making themselves seem important. And while the Friara does not doubt that such powers exist, he clearly has no intention of basing important leadership decisions on their advice. And in a world in which the supernatural does not exist, the one I personally think I inhabit, he would have a point. In such a world, priests and the like serve several functions in religious human societies that can best be served by those for whom their talents are intellectual rather than physical. These functions can serve a whole spectrum of interests, from reinforcing the power of the state to helping the poorest and most vulnerable in society. I live in a nation in which the head of state, King Charles III, is also head of the state religion, at least of England. This state religion, the Church of England, was established by a king, Henry VIII, who wanted a priesthood who would serve the interests of his realm alone. And ever since its establishment, part of the role of the Church of England clergy has been to reinforce the view that the monarch is literally chosen by God. However, the church that Henry VIII took over, the Catholic Church in England, served a crucial function in its network of monasteries that provided aid to the poor among their other functions. All of this came to an end in 1536 with the dissolution of the monasteries, the ruins of one of which lie in my hometown of Lewes in East Sussex. And with their dissolution, an entire social contract between rich and poor came to an end. The contrast between a monastic tradition of helping the poor and a clergy who reinforced the God-given right to rule of a head of state perhaps sums up best the range of functions of a priesthood throughout history. So that, very briefly, is the function of the clergy in a world where the supernatural does not exist. They can serve a range of social functions best fulfilled by those of a more intellectual inclination, absolutely none of which, you might argue, would be needed in the rabbit society described in Watership Down. Only here's the thing. As has been clearly stated several times before in this podcast, Watership Down is very clearly set in a world in which the supernatural does exist. The implications of this are wide-ranging, and the story told in the novel would not be possible without such a very real supernatural operating in and alongside the apparent world. The true nature of this supernatural realm, as accessed by Fiver whether he wishes to or not, are what makes him the reluctant shaman. Because in such a world, the priestly class have a very real supernatural function, and of course, for many of you listening, this may be the world you believe you inhabit, one in which the clergy of your religion serve such a supernatural function. You won't find Fiver running services in praise of Frith and Elachera, though he does find himself having to deliver a couple of sermons, one on the true nature of the Warren of the Snares, and one, just to Hazel, on the nature of the other world. In the rabbit religion, there are no churches, no monasteries, and no written scriptures. What there are, to use the druidic tradition as a parallel, are rabbits whose talents lie in the area of the bard as keepers of stories, such as Dandelion and Bluebell. And then there are the ovates, the seers, the shaman, those who can access the other world in order to provide warnings or inspiration. You might even call it prophecy. Fiver is one such rabbit, and, by all accounts, a very powerful one. This is his story. Fiver, the reluctant shaman. The first mention of Fiver's name comes when Blackberry says he is jumping at bluebottles or flies, when his nervous behaviour causes a couple of rabbits to panic. He is a small rabbit with wide eyes and constantly nervous. His name, Chreru in Lapine, refers to his having been the fifth, or Chre, meaning anything over 4, rabbit in his litter, and he is clearly the runt. Blackberry's conversation with Buckthorn concludes with him saying that it's surprising nothing has got Fiver before now. He jokes that Fiver would either be too small a meal or too small to be seen. But it does seem that this small rabbit has managed remarkably well to stay out of harm's way. Fiver, who is with his brother Hazel, is feeling particularly nervous this evening. As usual with his feelings about danger, there is something about the Warren this particular evening that he cannot explain, but it makes him want to sillflay further away from the Warren. Fiver finds cowslips to eat, but they are promptly interrupted by 2 owlsler, for whom these are a privilege. Hazel tries arguing with them, but Fiver just moves away. Hazel suggests feeding on the other side of the brook, a reference I missed when I visited the site of Sandleford Warren in 2021, and they move away, but not before Hazel has checked with Fiver that it is safe to do so. The danger Fiver is sensing is more general and oppressive, and as they near a lane, they see the notice board. And suddenly Fiver knows. Something terrible is coming to Sandleford. He sees the field covered in blood, and rather than bolting, just sits crying. When Hazel suggests going back to the Warren, Fiver becomes terrified and has to be practically forced underground. That night, Fiver has a nightmare that references the events later in the book, in which he and Hazel are floating down a stream on a board, like the one they saw, but it seems to be made of bones and wire. Hazel tells everyone to swim. Fiver then has to drag Hazel out of a hole. Then Hazel floats away down a tunnel of water, having referred to herself as the Chief Rabbit. Fiver's dream, though he doesn't know it, has reference to the destruction of Sandleford, the swimming of the Enborn, the escape down the test on the punt, Fiver's finding Hazel after he is shot, Hazel becoming a great leader and his meeting with Woundwort, and the swim through the bridge after the punt gets stuck on the test. None of these predictions are of any particular use to them, but the general sense of dread is palpable, and Fiver says they must leave the Warren. Hazel decides they should try to warn the Freyra, but Fiver's emotional state is so bad that he comes across as just being mad. His behaviour annoys the Freyra as he goes into a panic attack, and the attempt to warn the Chief Rabbit has failed. But there are rabbits who clearly take Fiver more seriously, among them Blackberry and Dandelion, especially after they are told about the notice board by Hazel. Bigwig challenges Fiver, asking if he is making it all up, and the confidence of his answer prompts Bigwig to make the first reference in the group of rabbits to leaving the Warren. This forces a decision from Hazel that he and Fiver will leave that night. The 11 rabbits who arrive to leave Sandleford haven't all been convinced by Fiver. Most of them seem to have simply had enough, but Pipkin, another small rabbit, has been personally persuaded by the brothers. Some of the rabbits who join the group expect to find Fiver raving, but he has become calm now that he knows they are leaving. When Holly arrives to arrest the 2 owlsler who intend to leave, Fiver seems to dread that they are going to stop them all. Now that the time has come to leave, Fiver's strength seemed to become irrelevant as the group venture into the alien environment of the woods. Pretty soon, both him and Pipkin have become exhausted, and the group have to rest, though Fiver still seems cheerful. On arriving at the River Enbourne, the limping Fiver immediately says they need to cross it. Several of the others do not understand why, but he quietly explains to Hazel in a conversation that reveals that Fiver is also very intelligent. If they cross the river, the ground will begin to rise again, and this is their best chance of finding the kind of new home he is imagining. A high, lonely place with dry soil where rabbits can see and hear all round. Is Fiver also sensing their future on Watership Down? The arrival of the dog forces their hand, and Fiver is quick to understand Blackberry's plan to float him and Pipkin across the Enbourne on the piece of wood. Having reached the other side, Fiver pushes Pipkin onto the bank and acknowledges to Blackberry that he's saved them. After Hazel scouts out the beanfield, Fiver and Pipkin are soon in danger again as they are attacked by a crow, but the group save them. In the beanfield, they get to rest properly for the first time since leaving Sandleford. Having crossed the road, the rabbits reach the alien environment of Newtown Common, where the rebellion begins. Fiver's inability to precisely predict all the dangers they have faced seems to have persuaded Speedwell, Acorn and Hawkwit that he was wrong about something bad coming to Sandleford. As Bigwig rounds on them, Fiver takes Hazel aside for an important conversation. He sees the high, lonely hills of Watership Down for the first time in the distance, and he excitedly points them out to Hazel. But he also sees, somewhat ironically, the main danger they will have to go through first, although he cannot define it yet. It appears to him as a mist in which they will be deceived and lose their way. The coming terror and insanity of the Warren of the Snares causes Fiver to slip into a waking dream in which he refers to a rabbit who goes back through the gap not being safe. He has vaguely foreseen the snaring of Bigwig, though not, again, as a clearly defined event. He snaps out of it, unaware of what he has said. Was it him speaking those words, or was it something else speaking through him? At last, they come through the alien landscape of the heathland, and Fiver, as happens several times throughout the book, takes a back seat as they rest in this more familiar landscape. Before the arrival of Cowslip, Fiver just keeps his thoughts to himself as the others become enthusiastic about stopping their journey and settling here. He probably realises there is little point in saying that they should carry on to the hills, though he does question why there is evidence of such a lot of human activity. He takes no part in the digging and keeps himself to himself and seems nervous. Is he just waiting for that mysterious mist to reveal itself? He doesn't have to wait long. Very appropriately, the arrival of Cowslip is announced by Fiver stamping an alarm, and it is Fiver who first asks Cowslip the relevant questions as to whether he can be trusted and how many other rabbits are in his warren. After Cowslip leaves, Hazel includes Fiver in the group that he takes advice from, and Fiver's advice is clear. They should have nothing to do with Cowslip or his warren and should leave at once, but he seems to know there is no point in saying this. And when the group make their way to Cowslip's warren, Fiver is last. In the whole of the chapter named Hospitality, Fiver is only mentioned once, sitting away from everyone else and seeming ill or depressed. It is a notable contrast from the generally upbeat tone at this point in the narrative. As the other rabbits begin to notice the strangeness of this warren, Fiver leaves the warren that night and stays under a yew tree at the edge of the nearby copse. Significantly, the yew tree is often associated with death, being a long-living evergreen tree with poisonous berries that is often found in church graveyards in Britain. When Hazel finds him, he insults the others, saying that the sight of them carrying flayra back to the warren reminds him of dogs carrying sticks. The fact that this flayra, which we would call waste vegetables, has been left by a human seems relevant. He responds to Hazel's anger by saying he should be angry because Hazel is not listening to him and should know better. He knows Fiver is not mad. When the possibility he might be wrong is pointed out, he indicates rabbits carrying food like squirrels with nuts. Fiver asks why the human leaves this food for them. The default assumption, perfectly reasonably, is that it won't be an act of kindness. He flattens himself to the ground as if hiding from prey, and says outright that there is something unnatural and evil twisted about this place. A strange phrase, but he cannot define exactly what it is yet. And yet the metaphor he uses as he tries to explain is very significant, as if he is slowly getting to the truth. He says that the truth he is trying to reach is like trying to push your nose through wire netting to reach the bark of an apple tree. Not only is this a reference to one reason why humans kill rabbits, it is also so close to what is happening here. Only the wire in this place is easy to push your nose through. Fiver makes it clear he'd rather go back over the common than enter the warren. He says the roof of its great barrow is made of bones. Hilariously, Hazel thinks he is being literal and corrects him. This is when it becomes clear that Fiver has spent the night out in the open in the rain. He says a yew tree provides good shelter. Later, after Hazel and Bigwig unknowingly discover the site of a snaring, Bigwig bullies Fiver into coming back underground. After the telling of the tale of Efrafa and the king's lettuce and its odd reception, the poet's silverweed is introduced. Fiver asks Hazel to come with him as he gets closer to this strange rabbit to get the measure of him. Fiver is terrified of silverweed already. To him he smells of rotting barley and rain, or a wounded dying mole above ground. Yet, having been forced below ground, he seems to know that this rabbit is a key to the mystery of this place. Silverweed's poem of wishing for death horrifies Fiver, who seems to almost recognise some of the things he says. He is utterly absorbed by it and repelled by it. By the end he has bared his teeth and is licking his lips in disgust. And then he bolts outside, barging past several rabbits hysterically. As Hazel and Bigwig overtake him, Fiver raves about what he has just heard. It was the truth, a truth he felt himself drawn to until a small part of him drew aside at the last moment. He says the roof of the great barrow isn't made of bones. It is a mist of folly. This seems to be the mist ahead of them he mentioned to Hazel on the common. Fiver is in despair. He says they will never see Frith's light again, adding that a thing can be true and yet still be desperate folly. And this way of thinking about the inevitability of death seems to make a strange kind of sense for a prey animal like Fiver. Yes, death is inevitable. We all know that. But you still spend your whole life trying to either avoid it or ignore it. The rabbits of this warren, by trying to do the second in a deadly situation, have been driven to a kind of insanity. And Fiver now feels this clearly, even though he is still not sure of the cause. As Hazel and Bigwig try to reason with him, Fiver says they are both deep in that mist as well. Angrily, they both force him below ground again. Seemingly at first light, Fiver leaves the warren again. This time he means to leave properly, as he feels he, a small vulnerable rabbit above ground, will still be safer than the others. Hazel and Bigwig catch up with him by following his line in the dew. He tells them he is going to the hills, and angers Bigwig by saying he is closer to death than Fiver. Hazel's attempt to reason with Fiver by going with him infuriates Bigwig, who says he is done with him. Telling Fiver he's going to make sure that the others are as well, he runs through the hedge and straight into a snare. Hazel tells Fiver to fetch blackberry and silver. Fiver succeeds in alerting the others, shouting to everyone in the great barrow, and when Cowslip seems indifferent, he goes up to him to speak with him quietly, seemingly showing respect for the effective chief rabbit. In response, Cowslip curses at him and lashes out, scratching Fiver's ear. In response, Fiver tells him they will all be leaving. Strawberry, the rabbit who showed Hazel around the warren, clearly hears this, having apparently just lost his doe, Nildro Hain, to the wires. We only learn the full details of this encounter later. In the meantime, Fiver is the third rabbit into the hole that is dug to try to get the peg of the snare out. And it is Fiver who breaks it, his small size for once being an advantage. But Bigwig has already died, or so it seems. No sooner has the account of what happened to Fiver been told than he has come round, swearing to kill Cowslip. As the bloodlust takes hold among the group, Fiver's true power comes to the fore. He is insane with righteous anger, and gives his first full sermon, and his manner is such that no one dares interrupt him. He tells them a story, a dreadful true story of a warren that, after being decimated by the white blindness, accepted the constant threat of a known source of death, the farmer's snares, in exchange for safety from other forms of death and a life of lapine luxury, for as long as he managed to remain alive. And the tension of this changed their behaviour to become unnatural. And no one ever asked where anyone was, something Hazel had noticed already. As for even mentioning the snares, that would provoke violence. The warren of the snares has been Fiver's equivalent of Bigwig infiltrating Efrafa. His reputation has increased massively. Bigwig actually asks him what they should do, adding that Fiver has bitten through a larger peg than the one he is still dragging. Hazel already knows what Fiver will say. And at last, interrupted only by the arrival of the hysterical Strawberry, they set off for the hills. As they arrive at the foot of Watership Down, they are now taking Fiver's intuition seriously, passing under an iron tree or pylon only when he says it is safe. Fiver has made it clear they need to climb this hill, as it will be easy to dig holes in the light dry soil at the top. He insists Hazel does not go alone to check it out. As a result, Hazel chooses Hawkbit as one of those to go with him, and it is Hawkbit who discovers the old burrows halfway up, which probably helped keep them all alive. At the top of Watership Down, Hazel refers to Fiver as Fiver Ra, such is his admiration for the place his brother has brought them to. Hazel only mentions Blackberry's idea of digging holes at the top of the hill to Fiver at first, and once the whole group reach the top and the northeast corner of the beach hanger, it is Fiver who vocally agrees that they should dig here. And then, later, Captain Holly arrives at the foot of the down with Bluebell, and they learn just how right Fiver was about Sandleford Warren, which has been utterly destroyed by humans. When Holly asks Fiver about his talking to the Thrayara to try to warn him what was coming, Fiver replies that the Thrayara talked to him. Surely now they can never doubt Fiver again. When Holly tells the group exactly what happened, Fiver tells him they know what Cowslip's rabbits smelled like when he gets to that part. He will probably never forget it. And then Kihar arrives. Fiver has no doubt that the recovered Kihar will return from his mission to find other Warrens. Later, out of the blue, he says, "The gifts of El-Khairar, trickery, great danger, and blessing for the Warren," in front of Hazel, and doesn't seem to be aware that he spoke. Is he channeling someone else? If so, who? When Kihar does return, Fiver is the first rabbit he addresses as he reports what he has found, calling him Lilvon in his heavy accent. Fiver seems reserved talking to Kihar, while Bigwig has easily befriended him. With Holly and his party departed for the warren to the south, Hazel has his idea for taking a look at the farm where there are hutch rabbits with Pipkin. On his return, Fiver is unimpressed. He clearly senses danger, saying Hazel is showing off for something that will bring them little gain. But Hazel is not listening. Fiver tries asking Hazel not to go to the farm as they prepare for the raid. The danger he senses comes not from the farm, but he also points out that he was unable to detect several of the dangers they have faced, such as the Lendry or the Crow. The danger with Fiver's abilities is false negatives, or his not detecting danger, but it is not false positives. When Fiver does warn you, it is best to take it seriously, which Hazel is not doing. Perhaps this is why he says to Hazel that what he is feeling is coming from Hazel himself. For Fiver, he is standing out like a dead branch against the sky. One last time, he asks Hazel not to go ahead and just wait until Holly returns. Hazel refuses, but agrees to stay out of the farmyard itself during the raid, saying he is meeting him halfway. The decision made, Fiver makes himself scarce. And, of course, Hazel does enter the farmyard during the raid, and is shot. As Blackberry, Hawkbit and Speedball go ahead of the rest of the raiding party, they meet Fiver, who has seen a fourth rabbit limping behind them, covered in blood. He already knows what has happened to Hazel. Fiver retreats to his burrow and is left alone in his grief. In his grief, Fiver sleeps fitfully, and in his sleep he dreams, and in his dreams he accesses something supernatural. He follows the ghostly rabbit he saw down the hill into the morning mist, and finds himself back at the notice board at Sandleford. Only a man is there who has taken the board down and says he is putting up a new one for Hazel. Fiver wonders how a board can say anything, and the man telling him it does possibly indicates some kind of access to the human mind on the part of Fiver, perhaps the same kind that enabled Fiver to know what was coming to Sandleford. The marks on the board seem to chatter the mocking phrase, "In memory of Hazel Ra." They mock and laugh. The man says he is going to hang Hazel up on the board, only he can't, because Hazel is in the bloody hole. Fiver looks in this hole, a pipe in a culvert, and sees something moving, and the man hits him on the head, waking him up in a panic. Blackberry finds him covered in light earth from a roof collapse due to the hot weather, and Fiver says Hazel is alive, asking Blackberry to take him to where he last saw Hazel. In no time they are at Nottingham Farm and in the ditch up the lane. where Fiver sees a trail of blood and finds Hazel in a culvert tunnel. During Hazel's incredibly painful journey from Nuthanger Farm, Fiver is quite relaxed, despite being with a rabbit smelling of blood in broad daylight. Fiver had been told about Holly's return by Blackberry, but unsurprisingly was not listening. As Holly begins to tell the others about Efrafa, Bigwig notices that Fiver and Blackberry are missing and wonders if they have left the warren in despair. And then, after Holly finishes his tale, Blackberry arrives back to say that Hazel is alive and Fiver is with him in a ditch at the foot of the hill. Bigwig joins Fiver and Hazel in the ditch that night. Fiver has checked Hazel's injuries, which are bad, but there are no broken bones. Hazel stays at the foot of the hill for 3 days, during which he has a conversation with Fiver that is one of my favourite sections of the book. I covered that conversation way back in episode 26, and as I cannot improve on what I said then, I will selectively quote it here. Quote, "Their conversations there are what decide the course of the rest of the book. When Hazel says that none of them would be there if it weren't for him, Fiver responds by asking if they really are on Watership Down. This is the strange opening to Fiver talking of another country where we go when we dream and when we die. Efrafa seems to have had the ability to move between the two, which will be demonstrated in later tales told during the story. Many rabbits think it is a pleasant place to be in, but Fiver disagrees. He thinks it is wild and dangerous. Fiver repeats his question. Are they really here in this world or in that other place? Hazel says that as long as their bodies are in this place, that's good enough for him. When he jokingly says Fiver should talk to Silverweed, the poet from the Warren of the Snares, Fiver responds by saying that the terrifying thing about him was that he knew they belonged in that other place. In a world in which where there is no supernatural, this is just a way of saying he was suicidal. But again, Watership Down is not set in such a world. So, what is Silverweed? Fiver ends chillingly and mysteriously by saying that the ones in that country got Silverweed, and that they don't give away their secrets for nothing. So does that always also apply to Fiver? Is it this that scared him so much? End quote. When Holly joins them, Hazel outlines his plan to him, for him, Fiver and Blackberry. Holly is very alarmed at the thought of returning to Efrafa, but Fiver isn't, even though he knows it should feel incredibly dangerous, and that, for Hazel, one suspects, clinches the matter. As thoughts turn to the mission to Efrafa, Kihar responds to accusations that he tipped off Fiver where Hazel was by saying that Fiver has travelled a good deal further than him. Having returned to the Down with Hazel, there is a meeting in the honeycomb in which Holly strongly argues against the plan again. However, Fiver makes it clear that he will be going as well, but he promises that he will say if he feels any danger during the mission, and Hazel promises to listen to him. This starts a cascading effect that results in everyone except those who Hazel says shouldn't saying they will go. On the journey to Efrafa, Fiver is consulted to see if he senses any danger from the suspiciously long and straight Caesar's Belt woodland. He doesn't. Later, Fiver is involved in the meeting, which Bigwig is told that he will be going into Efrafa. Later still, his opinion is sought as to how close to Efrafa they should stay. He agrees with Kihar's suggestion of staying on the other side of the River Test as soon as possible, even if it tires them out getting there. During the telling of the story of Efrafa and the Black Rabbit of Inlay, Fiver seems very calm and unaffected, and he offers to take Pipkin further away as it is scaring him. Later, Hazel realises that he was probably using the excuse to be lookouts. Because of this, the fox that Bigwig then leads onto the Efrafa Wide Patrol is spotted, which means they all manage to avoid both dangers. Fiver does not just wait to feel danger. In this more military mode, he quietly acts with the initiative of an officer, avoiding possible danger even arising in the first place, though even he could not have predicted Bigwig's impetuous behaviour. Fiver immediately realises what Bigwig is doing, drawing off the fox, even though it was unnecessary. When Bigwig returns unharmed after they think they hear him being killed, it is Fiver who has the presence of mind to say to Hazel they need to get going before the others go tharm. Hazel's wound is troubling him, and he is relying on Fiver's counsel increasingly. Having crossed the Iron Road, they arrive at the alien environment of the bank of the River Test. Fiver is unfazed by this, sensing no more danger here than anywhere else. He offers to take the others over the river for Hazel, even telling him to calm down as he can see Hazel is stressed. He adds that he underestimates the others and tries to lead them across an alien thing that a Kihar calls a pridge. Fiver suggests making the others curious to get them to cross the bridge, and when he spots a fish, he calls it a waterhawk. When Hazel asks Fiver what he will do if a Hrududu comes, he just says he will run, which he demonstrates. Once on the other side, Fiver starts on some scrapes or shallow burrows with Pipkin straight away. Just before dark, Fiver recrosses the bridge to entice the less willing of them to cross. The next day they explore this far bank and find the plank bridge. Fiver and Blackberry cross it first, and find the punt. After an explanation from Kihar of boats and how ropes prevent them floating away, Blackberry has his big idea. And Fiver is the first to pick up on his meaning, remembering how he said floating things might prove a good idea again at the river in Enbourne. This is the cue for Bigwig to leave for Efrafa. Fiver plays very little part in the story while Bigwig is in Efrafa. When a group of them move towards Efrafa expecting the escape, Fiver joins them, but nothing happens. He senses nothing from Efrafa, which feels like the bottom of a river, and recommends to Hazel that they go back. He says Bigwig has probably had to sit tight for some reason. They can send Kihar the next morning to get a message from Bigwig. The next day, Fiver suggests Hazel should stay with the punt because of his injury and focus on the rope. And the escape from Efrafa begins at last. Fiver joins the chain of rabbits showing the way to the punt for the escaping Efrafans, but he cannot persuade them to get onto the boat without Bigwig. But the appearance of Woundwort does the trick, and Fiver and Blackberry board the punt with them. The rope parts, and the plan works perfectly as they float away down the test. Of all the rabbits on the punt, only Blackberry and Fiver seem to have any idea what is happening. When the punt becomes stuck on a bridge, Fiver is first to volunteer to follow Kihar through its low arch. As ever, he has little fear of alien experiences. A human crossing the bridge and not seeing them all induces more urgency. Fiver is asked to wait so the does can be persuaded to swim under the bridge, and he eventually helps the exhausted Bigwig through with Silver, which is appropriate after what happened at the Enbourne. Having lost the injured doe Thrawn Losa during the night, they set off back to Watership Down. After 2 or 3 days' journeying, they come to a place where Hazel suggests resting for a day or two, but Fiver feels it isn't a good idea. He also expresses admiration for a doe called Vilthuril. The Efrafan buck Blackavar says this is fox country after conducting a patrol, and their advice being ignored by a tired Hazel and Bigwig results in the loss of another doe to a fox. Fiver has managed to avoid the other world for some time now, his intellect having come to the fore. However, once back on Watership Down, the time to relax is all too short as the Efrafan Great Patrol arrives. Fiver finds himself in the honeycomb as the runs are blocked and the Efrafans start digging from above. In his fear, he slips into a trance state in which he tries to hear a sound of some kind that he calls leaf drift deep. He feels extremely cold, perhaps feeling the other world directly. And in this state, he accesses something. Something that makes him make a sound that is utterly unnatural for a rabbit. Just before the arrival of the Great Patrol, they had all listened to the comic story of the dog Rowsby Woof. But now Fiver seems to channel a terrifying version of this character, barking and cursing for dirty little beasts to get out, 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 out. His voice scares the digging Efrafans. Fiver lies unconscious in the honeycomb after this extreme vision. When the time comes to withdraw behind the last defences, he has to be left to the Efrafans despite Pipkin's pleading. Fiver is apparently unconscious throughout the horrendous fight between General Woundwort and Bigwig. When Fiver comes round, confused, he is still in a state of mind we can only guess at. With him in the honeycomb are the bloodied General Woundwort and the sadistic head of the Owlsluffer, Vervain, who the already injured Bigwig has just repelled. Woundwort mocks Vervain, telling him to finish off this small rabbit if he thinks he can handle it. But as Vervain advances on his latest victim, Fiver calmly tells him he is sorry, they can't be blamed, the Efrafans came to kill them. Vervain asks what they can't be blamed for. Fiver's calm response is, "For your death. Believe me, I am sorry for your death." These are the last words of Fiver's quoted in the book. and there is something about his manner that terrifies Vervain, a rabbit who has tortured and tormented many rabbits smaller than him in the past before killing them. He runs from Fiver above ground, and the dog arrives on Watership Down. A bemused Fiver finds himself in the company of 5 surrendering Efrafans. He tells the others the siege is over, and Bluebell jokes for days about the sight of the tiny rabbit with his party of large captured Efrafans. The arrival of Blackberry and Dandelion back from Nuthanger brings Fiver up to speed on events, and he and Pipkin are about to set off for the farm to see what has become of Hazel. But Fiver spots him returning to the down from the west with an incredible story. In the aftermath of the siege, Fiver is a changed rabbit, spending a lot more time alone. The mutilated bigwig comments that Fiver has paid a far higher price than he has. And yet he and Vilthuriel are now a devoted pair, and one evening, one of their kittens, named Thrayar, senses an approaching horse rider long before the sound becomes apparent. Vilthuriel says that this is Fiver's blood in him. Hazel comments that they will be all right if that is true. He suggests going underground, and spots Fiver on the bank nearby, near the holes. Fiver, without whom this warren would not exist. Fiver is last mentioned at the beginning of the epilogue as having brought his companions from the fields of Sandleford, a fitting tribute to an incredible and mysterious small rabbit. 5th in his litter, Fiver, Chreru, the reluctant shaman. Fiver's active involvement in the text is a lot more episodic than that of Hazel or Bigwig. There are many situations in which his powers are of no immediate use, and the fact that he seemingly has no control over them also makes his usefulness irrelevant at times, especially with threats he does not sense. But it seems that when it comes to ill intent on the part of humans or other rabbits, Fiver can be relied upon to sense truly existential threats. Perhaps the reason why he could not sense what was happening in Efrafa while Bigwig was there was because it was a known hazard anyway, with Bigwig in peril all the time. His powers are not perfect, and the ambiguity of what he has shown usually makes it difficult to pinpoint a specific threat. However, taking seriously any general feelings of misgiving Fiver has is a habit that the rabbits of Watership Down eventually develop. For without him, probably none of the original 11 rabbits would have left Sandleford on time, and more than one of them might have been snared at Cowslip's warren. Arguably, Hazel's worst moment of leadership results in his getting shot at Nuthanger Farm, when the hutch doe Clover, who bears the first litter on Watership Down, is already free. And this is because Hazel goes where he had promised Fiver he would not go, for Hazel's death would have been an existential threat. Such is the general quality of his leadership. And yet, couldn't Fiver's complete confidence about the mission to Efrafa have been another false negative? He also fails to sense the arrival of the Great Patrol. Or are all those events covered in the jumbled prophetic dream he has at Sandleford, which is sufficient to get a group of rabbits to leave, but far too ahead of its time to warn of later events? In any case, Fiver is a fascinating character, a small rabbit plagued with a terrifying ability that nevertheless saves many others and results directly in the founding of that iconic warren on Watership Down. Next time, we look at the portrayal of Fiver from the 1978 film to the 2018 Netflix miniseries.